Could you cancel out the side effects of Rinne Tensei by using Izanagi? Someone asked me this question in a live stream, and it's very interesting, so I figured I would respond to it in a video. Now, the first thing we have to take into account is that usually, Rinne Tensei is a jutsu that is going to kill you. You can resurrect people completely back from the dead, not as a simulacrum like the Edo Tensei, but you have to exchange that for your life. However, there is a little bit of conflicting information about this, because remember when Nagato was about to resurrect the entire Leaf Village, he said, "Oh, okay, I think I could resurrect everybody I killed in the Leaf Village attack and everything, so it's gonna be good." But Conan says something interesting. She tells Nagato that if he tries that jutsu in the state he was in, because Nagato was really tired, pretty much out of chakra after fighting against the entire Leaf Village in Sage Mode Naruto, and if he used that, he is going to die. But she said he would only die because of the state he was in, implying that if you're powerful enough, and if you have enough chakra, Rinne Tensei wouldn't kill you outright, and you could probably use the jutsu more than once in your lifetime. After the pain arc, though, that was retconned into being a condition. You die if you use the Rinne Tensei jutsu. And I've made an entire video about this. But this video is not about that. Because knowing that the character is going to die by using Rinne Tensei, there are a few jutsus that can circumvent that little issue, you know? And obviously the most famous one, and even, I guess you could say OP one of them all, is going to be Izanagi. A jutsu in which you cast a genjutsu in yourself, and you shape reality around you so that you do not die for a particular amount of time, which is exactly what you need if you want to stop yourself from dying from the side effects of Rinne Tensei, right? Well, there are a few problems, and the first thing we have to tackle in order to explain the problems here is the time limit of Izanagi, because there's a time limit for Izanagi. In the Danzo vs Sasuke fight, there's a particular section of the fight towards the ending where they cut in between Sasuke attacking Danzo, hitting him, and the eyes closing, indicating that Izanagi shuts down. And this led a lot of people to believe that every time you get hit and your Izanagi is activated, your eye is going to close and Izanagi is going to stop working, but that's not how the jutsu works. Yes, the jutsu sacrifices your Sharingan to be activated, but during its activation, you are immortal. It doesn't matter how many times you get killed during the Izanagi activation, the eye is not going to shut down until a time limit is reached. Remember Obito versus Conan, for example. He was drowning in that paper ocean for 10 minutes straight, and he did not die, and he was quote-unquote killed several times in that point, because those were 600 billion paper bombs. The jutsu doesn't shut down the first time you get hit. It grants you immortality for a short period of time, albeit for the time frame of a battle, it's a pretty long time, because even Danzo's Izanagi, who pales in comparison to Madara's or Obito's, for example, still lasts for a minute, and that can give him a minute of immortality per Sharingan, and he has 10 Sharingan, so that grants him 10 minutes of immortality, which Sasuke had to burn through in order to kill Danzo eventually. So, assuming you have a Sharingan and means to cast Izanagi, as well as a Rinnegan, nothing stops you from casting Izanagi, and then casting Rinne Tensei while your Izanagi is activated, and the Izanagi is simply not going to let you die. And Obito, in the War Arc, had all those three things. He had the Izanagi, he had a Sharingan, and he had a Rinnegan. So why on earth isn't he spamming Rinne Tensei? Remember, the entire plan for the whole series was to bring Madara back via Rinne Tensei. That's the reason why Madara gave Nagato his Rinnegan, with the intent of eventually Nagato resurrecting Madara. Maybe not voluntarily so, but Zetsu would do the same thing he did to Obito in the War Arc, latch itself onto him, and make Nagato cast Rinne Tensei to bring Madara back. But Obito, who had already massive amounts of Hashirama cells because half his body was made up with them, and an entire wall in his lab filled with spare Sharingan which he could cast Izanagi from, could be just casting Rinne Tensei all day long, and he could have brought Madara back much earlier. Yes, maybe Madara didn't plan for that to happen because he didn't know he could use Obito. After all, Obito getting smashed by a rock was a coincidence, but after Madara realizes that situation, he could just teach Obito how to use Izanagi and say, yeah, just go get the Rinnegan back, you can do that, and we're gonna be good. And if I die again, you can bring me back, and if you die, I can bring you back using the same method, because you can swap eyes in Naruto like you swap light bulbs. And no, Obito wouldn't have to spend his Kamui Mangekyo Sharingan to use Izanagi, because as I said, he has an entire lab full of Sharingan that he got from the Uchiha Clan massacre. And even before the massacre, when he wouldn't have access to that many Sharingan eyes, he could still hunt some Uchihas down, get their eyes to use Izanagi and everything, just exactly what Danzo does. I mean, he also gets his eyes in the massacre, but he was probably doing the same thing before the massacre. You know, with Orochimaru and his experiments imbuing Danzo with Hashirama cells. That's how his arm gets the Hashirama cells and the Sharingan. Those things were happening way before the Uchiha Clan massacre happened. So this would be a massive exploit where Obito could use to bring Madara back and bring other people back that he wants to as well. For example, Rin. There's this debate on whether or not Obito was doing everything he did for Rin. Obviously he was. People that say Obito was not doing everything for Rin are coping. They try to convince you by saying that Obito told everyone that he's not doing this for Rin, and he told Kakashi he's not doing this for Rin, but every time he talks after he gets unmasked, he somehow brings up Rin into the conversation. And when he died, he saw Kid Rin in the afterlife and everything. Rin was his entire motivation. There's this light novel about the Akatsuki when we get some Obito scenes, and during the Obito focus scene, in the very end of his scene, he's like, just a little bit more, Rin. Just a little bit more, as he is the orange masked guy. So yes, he was doing everything because he wanted to see Rin again, because he couldn't let go of the past, and he was just a desperate, pathetic man. Does that make him a bad character? No, I find that actually very interesting. But the entire motivation collapses if Obito was simply capable of casting Rinne Tensei and not dying because he could use this exploit. You know, get Nagato's Rinnegans back, just like he did in the original. Implant the Rinnegan in your eye socket where you don't have a Mangekyo Sharingan on because you gave your Sharingan to Kakashi, just like he did in the original, and then remove your Kamui Mangekyo Sharingan, put it in a vial with formal to preserve it, obviously, and then implant a regular Sharingan that you have in your lab. And because we literally know Obito can cast Izanagi because he used it against Konan, after all, he has a spare Sharingan in his empty socket all the time because, well, if something bad happens and he needs to use Izanagi, that's going to be very handy. That's how Obito survives Konan, and that's how Obito survives Sasuke's Amaterasu that was implanted by Itachi. So you cast your Izanagi, and we know Obito's Izanagi is really strong, much stronger than Danzo's, for example, because he managed to become immortal for 10 minutes with one eye. Danzo needed 10 eyes to get 10 minutes of immortality, so Obito's was much stronger, and after you cast Izanagi, after you grant yourself 10 minutes of immortality, you can cast Rinne Tensei. And honestly, in 10 minutes, I think you can cast Rinne Tensei more than once. Now, maybe one casting of Rinne Tensei is going to expand all your chakra, but even if that's the case, even if you can use only one Rinne Tensei per Izanagi charge, you can still use several Rinne Tenseis with the amount of Sharingans you have there. So why on earth doesn't Obito do that? I mean, if he doesn't want to bring Madara back, because at the end of the series we see that Obito didn't really want to cooperate that much with Madara, he would still want to bring Rin back. I mean, it would be weird as hell for him to bring a 13-year-old Rin back to life when he was 35, but Obito was a weirdo, so he definitely would do that. I mean, he killed thousands of people because he watched her dying, so I don't see him not being a weird in this situation. And there are no easy excuses like Obito didn't know Izanagi or he didn't know the Rinne Tensei. No, he clearly knew both jutsus because, well, he literally used Izanagi, and he meant to cast Rinne Tensei to bring everybody in the alliance back in the war after he got taught no jutsu by Naruto, but he couldn't because Black Setsu took over his body and forced him to bring Madara back instead. So the explanation is clearly not gonna be as simple as that. And the thing is, Izanagi does not rip your soul out of your body. No, it kills you because it drains your body out of energy, out of its vital force. We see that happening to Nagato when he becomes even thinner and more sick looking than he already was when he cast Rinne Tensei, but also his hair got white, so you can clearly see the vitality being drained away. The same thing happens with Obito. He gets very tired, albeit his hair was already white because he was the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails before he cast Rinne Tensei. But anyways, Rinne Tensei does not rip your soul out of your body and takes it to the Pure Lands in exchange for the soul of who you're gonna bring back. Because if that's the case, then they wouldn't have to look all tired and everything like that, look older than they actually were. They would simply collapse and die as if the human path would have removed your soul, for example. You simply die and collapse because you don't have a soul anymore. But your body is exactly the same as it was. And because the jutsu doesn't remove your soul, it affects your body, the Izanagi effects should apply to you. You should be able to cast that genjutsu in reality itself to fix your body, just like Danzo is fixing himself when Sasuke hits him with a massive Susanoo arrow. I don't really see the difference between reviving somebody from that or any other powerful attack like an Amaterasu when Sasuke lands an Amaterasu on Danzo, or the massive paper bomb ocean, as well as the effects Rinne Tensei have on you. They make you old, they make you frail, they sip you out of vitality, you die. You could maybe say that Rinne Tensei is a jutsu that takes a little long to cast. So the time limit of Izanagi is not long enough for you to revive yourself after casting Rinne Tensei. However, that's clearly not the case. I mean, especially when it comes to Obito, because the way Obito revives Madara, yes, it wasn't technically Obito controlling himself, it was Black Zetsu, but that was really quick. It happened in the middle of the work when several things were happening at the same time. Madara was fighting against Naruto, Sai, and even Hashirama. And when it comes to Nagato, it also feels like the jutsu didn't take all that long to cast. So with a 10-minute limit, Obito should definitely be able to cover that. And Obito's limit could actually be longer than 10 minutes, because we know the paper bomb motion lasted 10 minutes, but technically his Izanagi could be even longer than that. So no, the time limit is not the issue here, and we know that you can survive for a decent amount of time even after you cast Rinne Tensei. Yes, it is sad that you're going to eventually die, just like when a Jinchuriki gets their tail piece removed, but if you're a particularly powerful person, you can soldier on for a little bit more. Meaning that, yeah, there's definitely a possibility that Izanagi is going to get you out of that, especially if you cast Izanagi before. I mean, you have to cast Izanagi before for the effect to take place. It's just like when Danzo was fighting Sasuke and he deactivated Izanagi, and then Sasuke aims a Susanoo arrow at him. He couldn't activate Izanagi fast enough, and so he used that wood-style jutsu to deflect the arrow, which was bad for him because it spent a lot of his chakra. And he did that because Izanagi was not active. If he got hit by the arrow and Izanagi wasn't active, even if he activated Izanagi after the arrow had pierced him, he wouldn't be able to shrug off the effects. He can only do so with effects that happened after Izanagi was cast. So yeah, you have to cast Rinne Tensei after Izanagi, but it would still work. So why doesn't Obito do that? Because I cannot accept that Obito simply forgot he could do that. And if you say, oh, maybe he just didn't want to spend the Sharingan or take out his Kamui Sharingan, but he can just plug that back. As I said before, you can swap Sharingans and Rinnegans and everything in the Naruto series like light bulbs. Madara was doing that in the war arc, grabbing Kakashi's Sharingan, putting Kakashi's Sharingan back to Obito. Think about that Sharingan for a second. That was originally Obito's eye, which he awakened the Sharingan during the Third Great Ninja War. He passed the Sharingan to Kakashi, which kept the Sharingan until he was like 31. Then Ten Tails Madara steals that Sharingan from Kakashi and implants it on himself in like 2 seconds. And after he used that to enter the Kamui dimension, he re-implants that back into Obito's original socket, giving Obito a dual Mangekyo Sharingan for the first time in his life. So no, there's not a limit of how many times you can swap your eye so long as the eye is not destroyed. I think you're gonna be fine. The same thing can be applied to Madara's Rinnegan, because originally Madara's Rinnegan were Izuna's Sharingan, which Madara implanted on himself to awaken the EMS. Then he awakens the Rinnegan when he's really old, puts the Rinnegan eyes on Nagato. Eventually Obito gets one of the Rinnegan, and then Madara gets the Rinnegan back in the war. So I don't see Obito taking his Kamui Mangekyo Sharingan out several times and reimplanting itself. Especially because Obito had so many Hashirama cells, he had a pretty good healing factor. He would be able to do what Madara was doing in the war arc pretty much and just plug them back instantly. But we still need an explanation. I cannot accept that, oh, Kishimoto just forgot about that. No. Maybe he should have mentioned something explaining why this wouldn't be possible, why this exploit is not achievable in the Naruto series, so I will give my own explanation. You may choose to accept or reject it, that's fine. If you have a better one, definitely let me know in the comments. But what I'm proposing here is a hierarchy of jutsus. Both Izanagi and Rinne Tensei are jutsus that harken back to the Sage of Six Paths and the creation of all things. But when it comes to the sheer power and potential of the jutsu, Rinne Tensei is above Izanagi in this hierarchy. Rinne Tensei can bring anyone back from the dead. It can also bring several people at the same time back from the dead if they were dead for not very long. After all, Obito wanted to resurrect like 70,000 people in the Alliance that had died up until that point of the war, and Nagato resurrected half the Leaf Village. Izanagi, on the other hand, is extremely powerful, but it can only not let you die. It cannot bring someone back from the dead that was already dead. Izanagi is also a jutsu that can be cast with a regular Sharingan. Yes, you need Hashirama cells to recreate, in a way, a simulacrum of the chakra of the Sage of Six Paths so that you can cast this inferior version of the creation of all things jutsu, but it is still, in terms of sheer power and you could even say nobility, a jutsu that's much below the Rinne Tensei. And because their jutsu is very much connected by their history coming from the Sage of Six Paths, Rinne Tensei, because it simply requires much more power to be cast, cannot be cancelled out by Izanagi. The effects Rinne Tensei have on the user's body go beyond them just losing their vitality. It's also something mystical, almost esoteric in a way. If you cast that jutsu, you are going to die. Yes, Obito managed to last for a while after that jutsu, but don't forget, he had half a body of Hashirama cells, he had Sage of Six Paths chakra, which he got when he became the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, and he was receiving constant healing. Black Zetsu was attaching himself to Obito, so he survived for a little while longer after he cast Rinne Tensei, but he would eventually die, just like all the Jinchuriki die when they lose their tail beasts. And no, nobody gives a real explanation as to why the Jinchuriki dies. Is it because it leaves a hole in your chakra reserves, or the tail beast power kills you as it exits your body? No, nobody says that. They only say a Jinchuriki that loses the tail beast is going to die, and they don't really elaborate. And with Rinne Tensei, it's probably something like that. Casting the jutsu on top of making your body frail and sapping your vitality will make you destined to die very soon. That may even be a condition for the jutsu's activation in exchange for such an amazing amount of power. After all, bringing somebody completely back from the dead, no matter how long they've been dead, is an amazing feat, and recreating that person's body is also great. It's exactly what happens to Madara in the war arc. So if you want to do that, you are going to sacrifice your life. There's no way around it. And maybe you losing your vitality and changing hair color is just an effect because you're spending too much chakra, but when it comes to you dying, that's a certainty. So maybe if you use Izanagi after you cast Rinne Tensei, you could shrug off the physical effects and even cosmetic effects. You would have your normal body because Izanagi would affect you in that way. It would quote-unquote heal you from that, but it simply wouldn't be able to heal you from the death condition that's imposed on you. Maybe you would die and Izanagi would bring you back, but once Izanagi runs out, you would die again, and then you cannot be brought back because you don't have Izanagi anymore. This is more like a vibe explanation, right? It doesn't have a lot of mechanics involved. Then again, the mechanics around how the Jinchuriki die because they lose their tail beasts are also very nebulous. And if that's not in play here, then there's this massive plot hole on why didn't Obito just bring everyone he wanted to bring back with this exploit, essentially. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Watch this video right here to find out why Sasuke cannot deactivate his Rinnegan. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the video, and most importantly, ring notifications, alright? Thank you so much for watching.